everybody. You alright?
Hi.
Would you like to say hello to Kieran here?
Hello. Hello, hello.
Kieran was my student many years ago, about 25 years ago. He
Yes.
was my student.
Yes,
and,
a long time
He's
ago.
really, really old, and I mean really older.
I'll be even older in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, how old will you be?
I will be 47.
47, oh my God. So, Kieran was my student. Back then you wanted to be a guitarist in a band and
I
rule
did.
the world,
Yeah.
didn't you? And become
Yeah.
a rock and roll hero and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I can remember him many years ago at college playing a Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper, on stage.
I did.
But once you left college, your interest went from playing the guitar, but you still play the guitar, but you got more and more interested in building the guitars.
Yes.
And so I thought it would be really nice to bring Kieran in. Do you want to tell us about these two beauties you've got here?
Okay. The one Andy's holding now, I built last summer as part of a project run by Crimson Guitars called the Great Guitar Build-Off. And the challenge is to build a guitar, basically, over the summer. I started in April and I finished it in September last year. And it's, I'm quite proud of that one.
A labour of love.
Absolutely labour of love.
I think we'll get into this later.
Yeah.
What about this one here?
This one, I call this one Erasmus, just because you have to give a guitar a name, because you just got to give guitars names. And I thought I'm not going to give it a girl's name because that's a bit of a cliche, because I'm middle-aged and that's a bit sad. So I call it Erasmus, which is the ship in a novel called Shogun. And I'm seeing a lot of blank faces, but never mind.
I know that.
Yeah, and it's the name of the ship in Shogun, where they go and discover Japan in the 1600s, basically. And it's been one of my favourite books, so I thought I'll use that because it's a cool name. This one, the timbers for it were donated to me by a company called Alpha Instruments. They make mainly basses. If you get a chance, Google them, because they make some really, really cool basses, like beautiful, really, really cool instruments. But I got to know one of the guys there called Chris from guitar trade shows, and he put a post out during the first lockdown asking for people that wanted wood to build a guitar. So I contacted him and said, I'll have some, because I like building guitars. And they sent me the Poplar Burl, that's called, and Sapele for the body and the neck, and an ebony fretboard. And I put it all together, stained the poplar blue, because naturally it's the colour that's the binding. So although that looks like binding, it's actually the edge of the wood top. They call that faux binding, so it's fake binding, basically. So it looks like I've bound it, but it's not. I've just kept the edge of the wood clean. And put this one together. This one, I started it in 2020, and then started, because life got in the way. But then I finally managed to get it finished the start of last year as well. But it was only the last guitar show that was in Liverpool in the autumn where I managed to take it and show him, because we've not been able to do guitar shows for years because of the lockdowns and everything going weird. So yeah, I finally got to show him a few months ago what I did with the timber he sent me. But yeah, it's an awesome thing, taking what is basically a piece of wood and you turn it into this. And then I'll give it to people like you that make awesome music with it. And that's the best part of it all. Definitely. Absolutely.
If you look at this, some people build guitars, but they'll go and buy a neck off the net, won't they? And all that type of stuff. But basically, Kieran's built all of this. So he's built that neck. He's hammered those frets in.
Yeah.
He's made that fit there. He's built that little plate that goes in the back there. That's all built by you. The only thing you ever built is basically the electrics.
Yeah,
and
the hardware and the pickups.
Yeah. So
I can't wind pickups.
Before, let's start real from the basics. So we've got a bit of education here.
Okay.
So before, because Kieran could get quite technical. I've just picked this guitar up for the first time, and I've dialed in a sound, as you heard when I came in on the amp. I've got a clean tone and a distorted tone sorted out. As soon as I picked this up, it became very apparent that this is got a very simple wiring in it, which is based upon like a Gibson Les Paul two humbucker.
It's just 2 humbuckers. Yeah.
Right. So how many of you understand what that means, or what the humbucker pickup is, and what we've got here? Right. So that's a little bit of knowledge that I've got, because I can pick up the guitar and I know the sounds that we've got within this guitar as soon as I pick it up, because Kieran's followed quite a classic. It's actually slightly simpler than a Les Paul, because we'd have a 2 volume pots, wouldn't we? So let's see what you know about a guitar. Shall we see what they actually know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So here they've got the strings. We won't go into all this. So we've got a sound here. So what knob is that one? Shout it out. Volume. So we've got a volume there. So what would this knob be here? Tone. Yeah. So if I put the volume up and strum this chord and turn the tone up. So that's the first bit of control I've got over the sound. Lovely. And then I've got a pickup switch here. So which pickup do you think is playing when it's pushed all the way to the top? The rhythm. Which one's that? It's the neck one here. Now, if you go up to an acoustic guitar and you pluck it here, you'll get quite a round sound. And if you pluck it back here, you get a tinny sound. And that's basically what the pickups get. So this one here is picking up this pickup. This one the other way is picking up here, which is a more... Right, and then what's the middle one doing? What's the middle one? But yeah, but it's playing them both, isn't it? That's the point. And have you got those in phase? Is that how you've got them? Yeah. So so we basically got on this guitar with the tone down, up. We've got 1, 2, 3. There's 6 sounds on this guitar that you can vary in between. Has everyone got that? That's how that works. Right, on the amp. So I can control that here. Now I find people everyone just seems to play with these up, but we can control the sound. So like here. That's that type of sound here. I could make. If I go to the other pickup and wind the tone off, I've got like a. I've got a very jazzy tone here, all inside this one guitar. Right. If I now go to distortion, you've got your very trebly. That's in the middle. I could go even more trebly. And that I'd be playing that more for sort of more blues, but at the other end, I've got that fat. Look, absolutely sounds lovely. Plays lovely. So,
Played it.
what? So, how do you get it to feel and play like this? I've never played this guitar before. I picked up, it plays absolutely beautifully. I'm noticing that the neck is quite flat. So, what does a flat neck? What's that good for? Has anyone any ideas? You've gone for a flatter neck, haven't you?
On the profile, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got quite big hands, so when I was carving the neck, I was basically trying to make it feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I know if you guys have picked up a Gibson before now, and the necks on some of those feel like a baseball bat. Let's be honest, they do. It feels like you've got to do that.
Yeah, really like that. And there's a lot at the back of the neck.
And so, really, I was trying to get rid of as much material on the back of the neck without compromising the strength and stability in it. So, the less material that's there, the less you've got to stretch your hand around to reach the fingerboard, which means you've got more access all the way along the fingerboard, which means it's easy to play. So it was really just trial and error, a little bit at a time, and just keep until I found what I felt was right and comfortable.
Yeah, the neck's absolutely lovely on this, and it's actually not curved like a normal. You've actually flattened it out.
Yeah, it's like,
which I really like, because it's like for sort of these big sort of, you know, these big stretch chords. Actually, I did that wrong. It's the dominant chord. Like that, putting your thumb on the back, it's really comfortable to put your thumb against it.
Yes, a flattened D is what we call that one.
Yeah, and then the frets are quite thin, aren't they? You've got quite thin frets on here from
Yeah, they're medium frets.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, it's a very characteristic thing. Sometimes when people have flatter necks and faster, they sometimes have a bit fatter frets, don't they? But they're nice and the height's just right. So, before we get into building them, what about setup? Do you want to give them some tips about what they can do with their guitars to get them to feel like this?
Yeah, right. Guitars are all individual, like you guys here. Right, you're all going to play slightly differently. You're all going to hit the strings harder, softer. You're going to dig in more. You're going to hold the strings down on the fingerboard harder or softer, depending on how you play and what you play. So your guitar needs to be set up to suit how you play, not just the guitar you're playing, because if it's not as comfortable as possible for you to play, you're not going to get the best out of it or the best out of yourself. So if you're a really light player, then you can have a much straighter neck and a lower action. Now, by straighter neck, I mean less relief using the truss rod. Right, okay, do you all know what a truss rod is in a guitar? Right, the piece of metal underneath the fingerboard that goes from one end to the other, and it basically adjusts how much bend you've got in the neck. Right, you're counteracting the string tension, basically. So if you play really light, then you can have your neck a lot closer to being straight and flat than somebody that really digs in and smacks the guitar really hard, because you're not making the strings vibrate and oscillate as much as somebody who hits it harder than you. Does that make sense? I hope so, because it's a one of you can go really deep and scientific on this. I'm trying to make it simple, because strings don't vibrate up and down; they also oscillate. So as well as going like that, they're also going in a circle at the same time. So the harder you hit the string, the more it's going to vibrate and oscillate. So the more space you need between the string and the fingerboard to hear the note properly. Otherwise, you're going to get rattle and fret buzz and all those things that kill tone and suck the life out of your amp and all the other nonsense that people will tell you is happening, when it's literally just a slight adjustment of the truss rod and a slight raising or lowering of the action, and your guitar will be playing like butter. That's literally all it is. It's all it is. And anyone can do this. Anyone can. The main thing is you're not going to break a guitar by adjusting it yourself. It won't happen. The wood the guitar is made from is really, really strong. Really strong. I test my necks when I've carved them. I stand on the neck before I fit it into the guitar. So I put it on the ground and I stand on the fingerboard, and it'll bend. But if it doesn't break, it's fine.
And remember, I stood on the bass from last week. So standing on instruments is a good thing. That's what we said. It's a joke. It's not a good thing. But the point is, they're strong.
Yeah, they're strong. So if you want to try and adjust it yourself, it's easy to do. You can. I mean, and it'd be good for you to do that because when I was going through college with Andy, I didn't have a clue.
I still haven't got a clue. I've only ever adjusted the truss rod once, and it actually fixed the problem I got. And I just went, let's just see if this works. And I didn't know which way to turn it for it to go. So does everyone got understand the principle of the truss rod? So it's up in here. You put an Allen key in. So if you put the Allen key in there and pushed it that way, which way?
Right. If you turn,
So
right,
I'm
okay.
looking at it clockwise.
Yeah. So if the truss rod adjustment is at the headstock end of the guitar neck, and you turn the Allen key towards the high E tuner, you are going to put more relief into the neck. So
What does that mean? More relief.
right, your neck is going to bend more in the middle, so it'll be shaped. It'll go more like that.
So you're pulling the neck this.
Yeah, the
this
headstock's
way.
coming. The headstock
It's
goes
coming
forwards
that way.
basically. If you turn it the other way, so you adjust it towards the bottom E tuner, you're going to pull the headstock back, which is going to make the neck have less relief or less bend. Because one thing you might have done it yourself, but I see a lot in guitar shops. One of the first things people do when they pick a guitar up is look down the neck, and 90% of them haven't got a clue what they're looking at, to be honest with you. But a guitar neck should never be completely straight and flat, because the strings won't have enough space to move and vibrate properly, and it will rattle and hum and do all sorts of weirdness. So you want a tiny bit of relief. Now, when I'm setting a guitar up, generally, I put a relief in that measures to around 1/4 millimetre. A millimetre and 1/4 millimetre, so it's tiny, 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 tiny. But that's all you need. If the person I'm setting the guitar up for, if they play thrash, heavy metal, rock, whatever, then I might do a bit more. So I might go, 3/4 millimetre or something like, to give them a bit more space, so that as they're really going into the strings, they've got room to move. That's all it is. But you're dealing with tiny, tiny, tiny fractions. Now, you guys got capos or capo, depending on however you want to pronounce it. Right, if you want to check the relief of your guitar, hold it as you would when you were playing. So, like normal playing position, capo the first fret. So straight across the F, like that, okay? Now that frees both your hands up, so you can do the next bit. The next thing you do is take a finger on your right hand, or your left hand if you're left-handed. Hold the bottom E string down at the body joint. So not at the last fret, not in the middle of the fingerboard, where the neck joins the guitar body. Generally, you're going to be looking at around the 16th fret. Depends on the type of guitar. Like on that one, it's around 21st fret because it looks like a PRS. On this one, it's the 16th fret. It's just the way the guitars are made. Then what you do is you figure out where in between the first fret and where your finger is the middle, which generally is going to be around the 7th or 8th fret. And then all you do is that. Tap the string. Now you hear it going dink, 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 right? That's because there's relief in the fingerboard. That's what you want. Just a little bit of that funny noise. That's the relief built into the neck.
So if you pulled it that way, away from you won't get that tap noise. So as you bring that forward, you're going to you're going to get. So that's a way of calculating the minimum, and then you can take it up to your taste.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times that I have people set the guitar up for me, and they they want to set it up so that it's like that's as low as it could possibly go, and it's maximum, and I can't play it because I actually pick quite fiercely. If you're doing sort of, which I can't do very well, that type of way of playing where you're doing what's called legato. Now this guitar, it just feels like you've got it exactly right because you can do legato, but when I'm picking, when I'm quick, I've also got that there.
The attacks there.
I've got that if you've got it going too far back as you go up, they'll start to
you'll start getting
they'll choke as you get up. So that I didn't know that. That's really brilliant. I feel confident to
Yeah, I mean,
You
just
know.
have a go, have a look. Same principle for a bass, exactly the same principle for a bass. It's just bigger. That's it. That's the only difference between a guitar and a bass from a separate point of view. Really, is the bass is bigger and longer. That's it. The basic principles are exactly the same. But you just check your guitars. You're not going to break it.
So once you've got that and it's all comfortable and you feel like you've got
Yeah.
it nice, you've got that feeling nice, then obviously you want to get it in tune. You'd be doing that all sort of roughly in tune, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But
Well,
obviously all these adjustments knock it out of tune, don't they?
yeah, they do. They all the adjusting a guitar affects what you've already done. So I've actually the method I use when I'm setting the guitar up is called train, TRAIN, and it's tune, relief, action, intonation, nut, and that's the order you do things in. So first thing is tune the guitar, and by that I mean tune the guitar, stretch the strings, tune the guitar, stretch the strings, tune the guitar, stretch the strings until the strings start going out of tune. Basically.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So you've got to get all of the slack out the strings first, because if you've got slack in any of the strings and you start adjusting things, the slack's going to go and you're going to lose the tuning point, which is going to knock off what you're measuring. So tune it first, get it stable, then check the relief. So capo first fret, body join, tap the string in the middle. If you've got a slight tappy noise, that's fine. If you want to actually measure it and do it properly, business card, playing card, piece of paper, something like that. If you can fit a business card between the 7th or 8th fret and the bottom E string, that's fine. And then you can adjust it to how you like it. You can add a bit, take a bit off, and then you can feel how it feels to you. And if you like it, and it works for you, go with it. That's the beauty of this, because it is entirely your preference and your playing style. Action is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because you have to measure the height of the strings above the fingerboard. Now, there's several ways of doing this. I generally measure things at the 12th fret. Now, the reason for that is the scale length. So, do you guys know what scale length is? Yeah? So, Gibsons are generally 24 3/4 inches. PRSs are generally 25 inches. Fenders are generally 25.5 inches. Then you've got basses that are like 28, 32, etc., etc. Right, so on your guitar, the 12th fret should be half of your scale length. So this is a 25-inch scale guitar. So the 12th fret is 12.5 inches. The reason you check it at the 12th fret is because it is half of your scale length. So if it's okay up to the 12th fret, it'll be okay for the other half.
That's the scale length, isn't it?
Yeah, and the total scale length is from nut to bridge, or saddle. So the 12th fret is halfway between those 2 points. But it'll be different on all the guitars. It's always slightly different. But that's why you have adjustable saddles on the bridges, because they're compensated, which I'll explain that. I'll explain that in a bit. So when you're looking at your action, again, it is a completely personal preference thing. If you want it to be as low as possible, so that you can play like Steve Vai and do all the fancy two-handed tapping, 4-note per string at light speed and everything else that you want to do, you can. You just have to understand that to do that, your guitar is going to make more noise than if your action is slightly higher. Because the lower the action is, as you move up the fingerboard, you've got less room between the rest of the string and the other frets on the fingerboard. And you start getting binding and fret outs and all that kind of thing. The notes will still, and it will still make noise and it will still play like you want it to play, but it's going to sound, more metallic. Right, so
And that's why a lot of the guys who play like that will have what looks like a hair tie upper there. And sometimes they'll move that. If they're doing a lot here, they'll move that up to here.
Yeah, because it's not working like a capo. All it's doing is literally touching the string. Because yeah.
It's that as opposed to. It's like I can't. It's there once that's there. I don't really play like this, but you know that's what that's doing there. You'll see some guitarists like Steve Vai will often hold it there and show off and do all that bit.
Yeah, it's what people think. Wow, he's playing backwards. He's got his hands the wrong way around. He's not. He's making sure he doesn't sound like an idiot. Is what he's doing basically. But he knows what he's doing, and that's why he does it. He was that Michelangelo guy as well. He used to play up the fingerboard and he'd flip his hand over halfway through a lick and then do it again. And I mean, I tried it. No,
you can't do that.
No chance. But it's fascinating to watch him do it.
If Paul Davis is out there watching this, he was a student back in the old days. He could go. He would literally go like that up the neck. He would like. And he used to also play with his first finger behind the neck like this.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And John Garbutt as well. Remember it? Oh, it was crazy watching him play. But anyway, action. Anyway, as I was saying. The same principle that I was talking about with relief applies to action. If you're a light player, you can have it a lot lower. If you dig in a bit more and you play harder, give it a bit higher. Right? Now, have you guys heard of a band called Pantera? Right? Dimebag, rest his peace. Vinnie Paul, rest his soul. There you go. There you go. Right. I read an interview with his guitar tech years ago, and there's things about him on YouTube where he's talking about the way he was setting up Dimebag's guitars. Now, you've all heard the guy play, right? He was a monster guitar player, right? He could play anything at light speed, and he was phenomenal. His action, no word of a lie, was like that. His action was enormous. His neck relief was enormous, but it was how he played. It's how he liked to play, which was how he was able to play the way he played. Now, you compare that to Joe Satriani, for example. His action, you could probably just about get a sheet of paper between the neck and the guitar strings for Joe Satriani, but he plays in a completely different way and makes a completely different style of music. But they're equally as talented and superb guitar players.
If your action's high and you pick a note, so say I'll put a bit of distortion on this. If I'm coming down, so say I'm coming down the neck like that, the higher my action is, as soon as I take my finger off, it's muted straight away. So you get a much more muted, accurate sound by having the action up. I pick every note, and this is slightly a little bit too low for me. I'd have it up a little bit so I'm having problems with the fast picking. And the same thing as with legato, you can dampen it here. You can bring it, you're having to bring your wrist in here a little bit. Like that for as opposed to. So we can do. And that's a lot more noise there. Oh, this is hard. Didn't know I'd be doing all this. So I think I'm glad Kieran said it, because I've always felt this. It's not like, let's try and get the action as low as we possibly can go. It's you've got to work out what you personally want action-wise.
And if you ever do take your guitar to somebody to set it up for you, right, you need to tell them how you play, why you play, and what you want it to be like. Because if you bring a guitar to a guy like me and say, I want that set up, the first question I should ask you is, what do you play? How do you play? How hard, how light, how savage, what do you play? Because that is going to determine how the guitar is set up for you. The trouble with a lot of places is they've got a method of setting up a guitar, and that's how they set up a guitar, which is one of the reasons I got into this in the first place, because I got annoyed of taking my guitar to guitar shops, getting it back, and it was exactly the same. They hadn't done anything to it. So, if you know how you play, that is going to determine how your guitar is set up. It makes no difference whether it's classical, heavy metal, thrash, gent, whatever. It doesn't make, it's all based on you and the guitar that you've got. And if you get it set up in the right the right way, you'll be able to play it a lot better. You'll feel more confident, and your playing will improve. Now, back in the day, I didn't know all of this. I just plugged it in and just hit the guitar, and I made noise. It was only a lot later and afterwards where I started getting into this and learning it, where it all started to make sense as to why certain guitars that I had were better than others and felt easier to play than others, was basically because they were closer to being set up the way I needed the guitar set up for me, rather than the way some guy somewhere went, oh yeah, that's how you set a guitar up, yeah, I'll play that. That's the difference.
And a lot of guitar builders have said to me that if you've got a really expensive 2,000 quid Les Paul, it will probably play great, and you pick it up. If you've got a cheaper guitar, this is where you really start to see the difference, because someone like Kieran, if he got hold of a cheap guitar, maybe change a few little bits, maybe a volume pot here or there, because all this stuff's not expensive. Maybe change the pickups out, and then set it up correctly. You've actually got a lot more for your money, haven't you?
Yeah.
So I love this train thing. I didn't know this. I love this. So the next one would be
intonation.
Intonation. So this is another mystery. Is how many of you know how to set your intonation up on the guitar? I'm not putting my hand up either. I don't know any of this stuff. Useless.
Right. Okay. So earlier when I mentioned the scale length, right? Intonation is basically to do with the scale length of the guitar. So the reason electric guitar bridges have got individually adjustable saddles for the most part, unless you've got a late 50s Telecaster or something silly, is so that you can adjust each string to compensate for the string length along the neck of the guitar. So there's no one way of doing it because each guitar is different. They just are. I know it's weird, but you can have two of the guitars that are identical, and they will be completely different from an intonation point of view. It's a weird thing, but it's just how it works. But basically, what you're doing is between the nut and the bridge is your scale length, but obviously the strings are all slightly different thicknesses. So the top E is a lot thinner than the bottom E, which means that it's going to have a different tension when you get it tuned to pitch. It's going to have a different amount of elasticity or flex or whatever when it's plucked. So the adjustable saddles allow you to compensate for that change across the strings. So when you're setting your intonation, you tune
which
the
is
string.
these here, you see, isn't it? It's those there, yeah.
Yeah, it's the adjustment screws on the back. It's usually like a tiny Allen key or a Phillips screwdriver, usually. Depends on how it's made. But tune the string, and then you compare that to the harmonic at the 12th fret. Right. If they're the same, your string's in tune all the way along. Right, now where it starts getting weird is when you check the harmonic at the 12th fret. If that's flat, you move the saddle forwards. And if it's sharp, you move it backwards. The way I remember is flat forwards, because it's two Fs. So it's easy to remember.
So that would be anti-clockwise?
Yeah.
To move it forward, and clockwise to move it back.
So, but obviously you got to remember, if you move the saddle, your string's going to go flat because you've shortened it. So you have to retune it again and check it again. And then you compare open string, 12th fret harmonic, and 12th fret note if you want to be really particular. So that's when you get them so it's the same, because the 12th fret is the middle of the string, you've compensated for the string length from there to there, and it will be in tune all the way along the neck. And then you repeat that for the next string, and then the next string, and then the next string, which is why you end up with saddles on an electric guitar that aren't even. They're not level. They're not supposed to be level. So if you pick up a guitar in a guitar shop and the saddles are all at the same position, it's not going to be playing as well as it could be. It's not been set up properly. It's not intonated. Now you can do it. Again, all you need is an electric tuner makes it easy, because you can see how far flat or sharp you are, and you can adjust it accordingly, and it will gradually you'll get it so it's the same pitch. And then what that means is when you start playing chords across the neck, so you play an E here, the E here, and then 7th fret, etc. They should all sound the same pitch. It'll be in tune with itself, basically. Because sometimes when you play guitar or bass and you go from the cowboy chords up here, it sounds slightly off. It usually because the intonation's slightly askew. Yeah, this is where he's going to embarrass me now.
You're stressed. You're stressed me, do they?
Yeah.
So you can hear those. That that's lovely.
So that's intonation. Again, it's not hugely complicated if you understand it, which is, it's basically getting the string of the guitar in tune across the entire neck. That's all it is. And to do that, you move the saddle forwards or backwards, depending on whether it's flat or sharp. And if it's flat, forwards. That's it.
And what's the N?
N is for nut, which is usually the one that's overlooked. The nut of a guitar is there simply to give the string somewhere to sit. Right? Now, you'll see loads of psychobabble about bone nuts are better, plastic nuts are better, buffalo horn is better, Graphtec is better, and all the rest of it. Personally, I use Graphtec because they cost about 10 quid each and they work. You don't have to worry about, when you're changing strings, you don't have to sharpen a pencil and get into the slot with a nib of a pencil to put graphite into it and all that to make it slide easier because it's built into the nut material itself. The slots in the nut are the important parts. They have to be at the right depth for the guitar to tune and intonate and set up properly. So if the nut slots are too low, you're going to have fret buzz from the nut up to around the 5th fret. So if that's where you've got fret buzz, it's probably because your nut needs to be adjusted or set or replaced, to be honest with you. And if you change gauge of strings, so you go from 9s to 10s or 10s to 11s or 11s to 13s or whatever you might do, if you go in thicker or thinner strings, the nut might not take the string properly, because if you're used to playing 10 gauge strings and you stick a 12 gauge set on, the strings are going to be slightly thicker. Now obviously I'm talking like fractions of an inch thicker, but it's enough to make a difference. So you'll get something called binding, which is where when you're trying to tune the guitar and you get some really weird plinky noises coming from the nut. That's because the string's binding inside the nut. So your nut slot needs to be slightly cleaned out. If you go in the other way and putting a lighter set of strings on, then you're probably better off putting a new nut on, to be honest. Because if you go in from 12s or 13s down to 10s or 9s, there is no way the guitar is going to stay in tune, because the nut slots are too big for the string. That's
the string's made it like that basically,
yeah.
hasn't it? Before.
Well, yeah, because it's a rough piece of metal. As you tune it up and down, it basically acts like a saw. So gradually you're cutting into the material of the nut slot. Bone is good because it resists that more, because it's bone. Although when you're cutting and shaping bone, it stinks. It's horrible. It does not smell very nice at all. Whereas these Graphtec ones, it's graphite basically, but it's got a lubricant built into it, so it lasts a long time, a long time. Now with the nut slots, the correct depth of a nut slot is so that when you hold the string down at the 3rd fret, you should have just a tiny bit of clearance at the 1st fret. So remember when I was...
Yeah, I can see that on here.
Yeah, so when I was explaining relief earlier and you were tapping the string, do the same thing, but hold down the 3rd fret
Yeah.
and tap over the 1st fret, and you should have a very, very quiet tap.
It's fretting at the 2nd fret, and then the 3rd
Yeah.
fret is just literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I can show you. I can put my plectrum in there. You can see it. Oh, the plectrum's too fat. It's like
Yeah.
a piece of paper.
Yeah, yes, that's the kind of. I mean, you can use, feeler gauges that if you want to get really, really precise with it, but basically you want just a tiny small amount of light through between the string and the 1st fret, and you'll be absolutely fine. If it's anything more than that, then your nut slots are too shallow, so they need to be like filed out very, very carefully. Adjusting a nut like that is one thing you don't want to do yourself on your favourite prized guitar. If you've got an old one that you don't mind going wrong on, practice on that first, because you've literally got to go slightly too far and it won't work. You'll have fret buzz and the string won't tune properly and it'll be sat too low and all sorts. It's easy to get it wrong, so practice.
It seems like that train thing. Once you get to N, it's no to novice. Because it seems like this is of all the things you've said, I've thought I could probably do that. I could probably do that all the way down the line. Then you get to the nut, and I'm like, nah, this is where I'm going to someone else to get this done. It sounds way too.
See, the thing is that especially with Graphtec, they make nuts specifically for guitars. So if you look on the Graphtec website, there'll be nuts there for, Gibson's pre-2000, Gibson's post-2000, Epiphones up to 2013, Epiphones post-2013, Fender up till date, from date to date, BC Rich, Jackson, they will fit them all. Now, if that's what the guitar you've got and you order the replacement nut, the old one should come out, the new one should fit in. It'll be slightly oversized because they're always slightly bigger than they need to be. So you just get some sandpaper and take the edges of it down so it's nice and flush. And it should be somewhere in the region of where it's supposed to be, because they've already cut it almost to the right places at the factory for you. So you're literally then just fine-tuning it. So, that's easy to do. Easy peasy to do. You just tap the nut gently tap it. Don't hit it really hard, or it will shatter or break, and then you'll have bits of broken nut everywhere, and you'll have a bit of broken nut in the end of the fretboard that you've then got to get out. Because I've never done that, honest. Especially not with the Fender. The Fender, they stick the nut in the end of the fingerboard. Yeah. Tapping one of those out once, I took the end of the fingerboard off with it. Slightly embarrassing. Don't do that. It's annoying. So, order the right kind of size nut, and it will fit, and you'll be roughly where you need to be. So do that. Have a go. And it's good, but do it on an old guitar that you don't mind messing with. Don't do it on your Christmas present or something that you saved up 2 years to buy, because if it goes wrong, it goes very wrong very quickly, and it's not fun fixing it at all. But that's why people like me exist, so we can fix these things for you. So, but that's it in a nutshell. Train, figure that out, and any of you could do it. It's easy. It looks complicated, and people make it sound complicated because they want you to spend your money with them to fix it for you. But all it takes is, a little bit of nous, a little bit of courage, just to have a go, and you'll figure it out yourself. And if you do end up being a rock star and taking over the world, if you know how to set up your own instruments, people will love you. You turn up at a gig somewhere and you've got your gear good to go and it's how you like it set up, easy. Makes it easy for the sound guy to sound check you. Makes it easy for the stage manager to sort your gear out and get you ready to go.
Most of the time with bands, and I've worked with bands for like 30 years, like young bands trying to get into the business and get sound better, the first thing before anything else is usually they're out of tune and their guitars don't sound very good. And that's what's making them sound bad. Same with the drummers, So that's really good. So you make sure you get it in tune.
Yeah.
Right, then adjust the relief, which was that there with that
Yep.
capoed there.
Yep.
And then you've got intonation, which is
Action.
those little just
Action.
yeah, which
Action.
is those little things in there. You need a tiny little
Grub screws, yeah.
yeah. Is that what it is in there? God, I wouldn't even know.
Yeah, tiny Allen keys.
Tiny Allen key
Yeah.
to raise those little saddles up and down to get that right for you, and that's your taste, pretty much,
Yep.
isn't it? Intonation, which is those at the back, and then the nut, which you should be less of a continual thing. You wouldn't keep replacing the nut, would you?
No, no, no.
These
One,
other
no.
setup things would be something you do
No, I mean
quite regularly.
The thing is, once you get a guitar set up, if you're putting the same strings back on it, you shouldn't need to do anything because you've already adjusted it for those strings, for that string tension, for that gauge of string, whatever. So if you've played tens for 6 months, change strings with another set of tens, preferably the same make, because even though guitar strings are made in the same way, you do get differences between manufacturers. So Ernie Balls will feel slightly different to Didarios and Blue Steels and D Markleys and all the rest of it. They are slightly different. So if you've got a set of strings you like, stick with them. So if and if you use the same gauge strings, stick with them. That way, once your guitar is set up, strings off, strings on, tune it, take the slack out the strings, keep tuning it, and it will be fine until the next time you want to change strings. If you want to change strings, that's when you need to check the setup again to get it, slightly adjusted and compensate for what you've done that's different. Because it's wood. It's a living material. Well, it was a living material. So, the weather lately has been cold and damp and wet and miserable and all the rest of it. So, guitars absorb moisture. It's wood. It's what they do. If they absorb moisture, it wants to go back to how it was when it was a tree. So it's got shape memory. So it tries to reform to how it was before we turned it into a guitar. So it moves. So your frets might feel slightly sharper on the ends. It's the wood shrinking and contracting around the metal, so you can feel it more. Give it a couple of months when the weather warms up and it dries, the guitar will move again and you won't feel it anymore. It's just one of those weird things, because it's an organic material, it's affected by changes in the weather, humidity, and the seasons. It's what they do. They do it every year. My guitars need tweaking at least once or twice a year because of that. It's what they do. But it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It's just reacting to the environment around it. That's all it is.
At this point, has anybody got any questions whatsoever about guitars?
Yeah.
In any way, have anyone got any questions?
Wow.
They're not. I know they're not. They never are going to ask. Nobody ever does at this point.
Does anyone want to play one of these? Because you're more than welcome to. Yeah, I know the little dude does. Cool, man. Because I want to know what people think of them. I know Andy's being very flattering, but he knows me. So
yeah. No, they really. I've seen Kieran a couple of times over the years, and he's been working on this project and he's been building the guitars. And last time, the potential was so there.
Yeah.
But this time, coming and seeing these are just absolute beautiful guitars. I can't think of anything. I can't see anything.
I can.
Yeah. But,
so I know it's there.
I'm sure none of you sitting here is contemplating building a guitar. I'm sure you just want to play them, and this is why I focused a little bit more on setup, because that's something that you would save you a lot of money, make the guitar sound really, really good. But something that's worth talking about, because it's exactly the same for drums, is what's replaceable on a guitar? What are the replaceable things? Yeah, so and some of them are really easily replaceable, like the strings, for example. But that's the first thing. So I've given you one there. You can replace the strings. But what else could you replace? Yeah, you could take the neck out, unless you've got a neck that's made out of the same wood as the body. Mm-hmm. These are really hard to replace.
Yeah, these are set neck, so it's the neck's glued into a pocket in the body. But Fender built his entire factory around the fact that he could mass produce a guitar easily, and you can swap parts from one Fender onto another and it just fits because of how they're made. So if you've got a bolt-on guitar neck, then yeah, you can take it off and put another one in, As long as the holes match up for where the screws go, you're good to go. It'll work.
So if you've got problems, if you've got cheap guitar and you've got problems, then you could, and that this was a major one. I didn't want to go on to about major ones, but this is a major change. But you could buy a new guitar neck. And how much would a reasonable quality guitar neck cost? Nothing out of the ordinary, but just something to get you up.
Depends where you get it from. I mean, eBay is obviously the obvious choice because it's so big. You just have to be careful. If something looks too good to be true, it is. But if you're willing to spend, anything upwards of like 50 quid, you can get yourself a perfectly good guitar neck. I mean, you can go ridiculous money if you want something.
But we're not talking. That's our point. It's not hundreds of pounds to get a decent guitar neck. No. It could be between £30 and £50 to get a new guitar neck.
I mean, following that principle on, there's a website called Thomann that sell all sorts of. They sell music gear like it's everything. They've got guitars and basses that are £90. They look like Strats and Tellys and Les Pauls and things like that. They're €89, these things. Now, I've set one up for a guy, a white Telecaster, and it was incredible. It's a £90 guitar. I gave it him back, and it's one of his favourite guitars. And it cost 90 quid.
This is a big. It's the same thing with drums. It's a big secret about with music that people don't realise, and a lot of the times what you're hearing. So, what are you hearing when you play guitar? What's really where's the sound coming from? Obviously, a nice set of strings, but then after that, where's the sound coming from on a guitar? It's the pickups, isn't it? So how much would be a decent pickup? Nothing again, just the middle. Like not a name one, just something that's gonna...
No. I mean, I've started using. I mean, the pickups in these guitars are Tone Rider. Now
So how much is one of these?
The set they're called Birmingham, and they're full like the harder heavy rock metal type sound. That set of pickups cost me £80. Right now, sound-wise, I'd put them up against Seymour Duncan's any day.
Everyone who builds guitars says this to me, and actually, if you work, once you start to get into this, you can get a decent, really good pickup for 40 quid.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke, especially the signature range ones. I know everybody wants Kirk Hammett's pickups or Dino's pickup and everything else, and they charge you a premium for that because that's marketing and that's what they do. But you don't have to spend the money to get a good sound out of your guitar. You just don't. If you want to spend £150 on one pickup, crack on. It's your money, it's your choice. You do what you like, but you don't have to. There are other options there. These Tone Riders, I've been using them for a couple of years. They're phenomenal pickups. 80 quid. That single coil, I think it was £18. That humbucker was 25 or £30. So I've got, a single and humbucker setup for less than 50 quid. And it sounds cool.
Now, there's another question I want for Kean, because I know it's the case for drums. With drums, all the hardware is far more important than the wood is in terms of sounds. If say one of these are bent, those tuning rods cannot tune that drum, you're not going to be able to get it in tune. So how much is that the case in terms of tuning and nuts and bridge? Yeah. Just swapping those out for something that's a little bit...
But again, it's easy to do because there are companies that make really good quality replacement parts. The bridge on that one and the tuners I got from there's a company called Northwest Guitars. They sell painting parts and guitars and all sorts. They're really, really good. The bridge I think was 25 quid, and the tuners I think were 30 quid, and they're 19-to-1 gear ratio lock-in tuners on that guitar, and they're phenomenal.
If you've bought a 90 quid guitar, the problem is that the wood's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. It's going to, it's not going to be nowadays with
probably
computer.
The best part on it, to be honest.
Yeah, you've bought that, but the amount you've spent on tuners and bridges is very low. So just swapping those out. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you do walk out of here thinking, well, yeah, I don't want to build a guitar, but I wouldn't mind knowing how to change my pickups. You know, if you want to change your pickups, or I know then it's not staying in tune. I wonder if I change the tuners because these get old, don't they? And they can stop. They can.
Yeah, the gears
You know, I mean,
go.
you tune it round and it's not going any higher. You know.
Yeah, the mechanism can shear where it basically just breaks inside. So you just keep turning it and it's not doing anything. The gears can slip. So as you're tuning up or down, sometimes you might feel it like it feels like a click under your fingers. It's basically the gears slipping so it's doing that basically, and it's skipping to the next cog on the teeth. Tuners are done in gear ratio. So it's for how many turns of the tuning peg you get for how many turns of the actual, string winder. So, like those are 19 to 1. So for each turn that way, you get 19 of that, basically. The bigger the ratio, the more stable the tuning is, generally. So you have 15 to 1, 14 to 1, 19 to 1, whatever. But those are really, really good. They're solid. And they're basically exactly the same as you get on high-end instruments. They just haven't got a logo stamped on the back of them. They're identical. They're the same tuner. And they cost 30 quid. But a replacement set of Ibanez, PRS, Gibson, Grovers will cost 90, 100, 120. They're exactly the same. If you want them, spend your money. But you don't have to, is the point. And putting good quality tuners on a guitar is one of the best things you can do to improve it for tuning stability and playability. Then it would be the nut. Those two will vastly improve any guitar. They will. Then you can look at doing the bridge, maybe, if it needs it. Sound-wise, pickups, cheap is cheap, it sounds cheap, but if you can spend 60, 70, 80 pounds, you'll get yourself an absolutely knockout set of pickups that will completely change your guitar, and you'll sound like a rock god, like instantly, like that. You will. And it's easy to do as well. Although, if you play high gain stuff, the pickups you've got on your guitar are less important than the amp and the speaker that you're using. But that's entirely another discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's all taste. All music's taste. There's no like one pickup's better than another pickup. And just because you spent a lot of money on a piece of equipment doesn't mean it's better than something that's cheaper. And somebody might, the sort of woolly old pickup sound, somebody might want that, but God, the next person doesn't want that at all. So it's all about you using your ears and deciding what you like, But the point is here is it's just a nice thing to know and explore, because if somebody's got a broken guitar, right, and they're chucking that out, and you know what you're doing, you can grab that and you can have the pickups out of it, you can have the tuners out of it, you could have the volume pots out of it,
It's like like Cash Generator, places like that. I've had several guitars from there for next to nothing. That have, I found a Schecter that they were like a Diamond Elite they were selling off. There was something wrong with the bridge pickup. I got it for like 60 quid, 70 quid. And that's a Schecter. Like, I was, okay, like, take my money, thank you very much indeed. But literally all it was the wiring was slightly frayed, like gone on the pickup. Touch it with a soldering iron, hey presto, the guitar's working again. It's things like that. It can be that simple, but you don't need to spend a fortune on them.
If you're lucky enough to get into a band that's actually properly touring, and with a proper artist, with management, at that point they're going to give you a personal tech, right? Mm-hmm. In the old days, I used to have a tech for my drums. I had 3, in fact. No, not at the same time. I had one guy. I probably had more than that, and I'm friends with these guys now. And a great tech looks after you. So I know a bit about tuning drums and all that setup, but I got a guy that does it all for me. And the guitarist would have a person that's doing that all for them. So you might be quite a good guitarist, but as soon as you've got a proper gig, and this is really worth remembering, as soon as you've got a proper gig, you'll have someone who is setting up the guitars for you, making sure your amp works, making sure it's absolutely tuned, that it plays lovely. He's going to help you with gear and say, I don't think you need that amp for this. And suddenly you sound twice as good because you've got a tech. Now, you guys haven't got a tech, but what you have got is Kieran's, because this is why he's come in. So, you know, before we finish, you've got all your bits of paper on the thing, and he's giving you a sticker as well. Is that right?
Yeah. That's for you guys to take away with it. Although this dude has already stuck it on his pedal board.
Oh, I like to see
so
that.
I'm not, yeah.
So as we're trying to train you up to gig, your guitar tech from now on is Kieran. You've got the contacts. You know, you can get in touch with him, and if you've got any problems, you know, you'll come in and you'll help them, won't you? This is why he's come down to do that. If you want to set up on your guitar done, or if you need something, you want to change a pickup, or you've got a thing you don't understand and it keeps doing something that you don't know why, it won't stay in tune.
Drop me a message.
Making a buzzy noise, keeps going off and on every time you... You know, all the things we have all the time. I got a guitar doing that. You're gonna have to have a look.
Have you?
Yeah, I got a guitar. It's a hollow body F hole, and that stopped working. And this thing now.
It's probably twisted as you've been pulling the jack in and out. It's probably twisting round.
Yeah, and it's just
gone.
Yeah. So
2 seconds with a solder.
See, to me, I'm like, it's an F hole guitar. How do I get inside? There's none of this on the back. I don't know how you do it. It's all a mystery, you know. So
it's all magic, mate. That's what magic and pixie dust. That's how we do it. That's how we do everything.
Well, can you give us some pixie dust so I can get it fixed? 'Cause I'm missing that guitar.
If you guys, any queries you guys get, something going wrong, something you're not sure of, drop me a message.
Have any of you got any questions about your guitars now? Have anybody want to show Kieran your guitars and see what he thinks? Do you want to do that? He's here. This is where we can get actually practical. Do you want to come and do that? Anyone's watching at home, this might get a little bit more like there's not much going on for you to watch, but you can keep it running if you want. But do you want to pass these round? Shall we pass these round?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then do you want? And that's because I think as well as playing these, it'd be nice for you to bring your guitars up and see what you think.
Absolutely.
What you think could improve it.
That's what I'm here for.
How many people have got guitars here? Get your guitars out. Basses as well. Drummers, you can show me your drumsticks. That's a joke. I don't want to look at your drumsticks.
Right, just thin ice there, mate.
So yeah, I think that'll be the next thing. Is Dr. Kieran?
Oh, hello. There we go.
Yeah, a pile of old rubbish there.
How dare you?
You like Les Pauls, don't you? I can
How
tell.
Dare you? Oh man, I got one of those when I was at college. I've still got it now. It's 20, 25, 26 years old. It's awesome guitar. They're great guitars, Andy.
I know. I love them. I'm only winding you up. I'm winding you up. So shall we? I think if they still watching at home, Dylan. Is they watching at home? Hello, people at home. They are. How many people are watching?
Hello.
Can people who are watching at home put a nice little like on Load Street Studios and put a little comment saying hello, Andy and Kieran, just so we know that you're actually watching and that you're enjoying it.
Do me a favour and follow Whitefoot Guitars on YouTube as well.
Yeah, those of you, can you follow Whitefoot Guitars for all your guitar repair and building needs?
Yeah, that's me. I am the local luthier for the Wyre Forest.
And that's he is. He's the local luthier. It wasn't he the baddie in Superman?
No, that's Lex Luthor, you loser.
Oh God! Right, Dylan, I want a cup of coffee now as well.